Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the Joshua Henderson Experience. Today we're going to be going over some training into how to distinguish between quantitative and qualitative research designs and the implications of this difference. So we're going to start off with our quantitative research design. Our basic definition, or the basic definition that I like to use, is that quantitative research design uses empirical measures to quantify the problem. And it utilizes these empirical measures to produce data that can be analyzed numerically and replicated easily. It also allows us to make generalizations about populations based on samples. One of the major disadvantages to this method is that it may lack nuance or depth only reachable through qualitative research. Now, compare that with the qualitative research design. It uses non-numerical data to gain insights into lived experiences of participants, uses non-empirical measures to produce data that can be interpreted by the researcher. Now, this can provide a researcher a deeper understanding of a phenomenon only accessible through description of experiences in a process called thematic content analysis. The name of the game here is to look for themes that are shared across different people's experiences with the same phenomenon. Now, unfortunately, qualitative research design also has its drawbacks. Number one, these designs are not often replicable, and the interpretations of the data gathered are often subject to researcher bias. So I'd like to continue by providing an example of each of these techniques being put to use in real-world organizational applications. So one example is a study conducted by Qualitative et al. In 2023 on the influence of Islam on organizational ethics and decision-making. This has to do, they call it corporate socially responsible behavior. This is what they're looking at. And so out of all the interviews that they conducted, the pilot interviews, they were analyzed, suggesting that Islam may have a substantial role in terms of ethics and decision-making. Data were collected from 63 senior decision-makers or business owners, and these interviews were audio recorded in order to preserve the participants' tone and tempo. An initial memo was created after each interview in order to capture thoughts and impressions by the interviewer about the interviewees. And then once transcribed, the line-by-line coding was performed manually, and 15,000 initial codes resulted from this. The process of collecting new sets of data continued until all of these categories were saturated and new data was not generating any further insight. And the data analysis suggests that when individuals' ethical sensitivity was alerted by an event or a problem, their reasoning in their response was affected by two important concepts, ajur and alakira. And these basically mean we believe in life after death, that's alakira. And whatever you do, whatever good deeds you do here, you will definitely be rewarded with after you die, because you are not asking for anything back, and that is the concept of ajur. Now, both of these further kind of hammer home that idea of the qualitative research design, because again, we're asking open-ended questions, we're asking about lived experiences, and we are getting this feedback that we can then thematize, and that is exactly what has happened here. So an example of quantitative analysis being used in an organizational setting would be Peterson and Crittenden's 2023 study on pre-employment job motives and voluntary sales force turnover. So Dionata was used to collect data from current and former independent contract workers in direct sales. And after a rigorous screening protocol, the data were collected from 495 current and 456 former direct sellers. A binary logistic regression analysis enabled prediction of voluntary job turnover based on the number of reasons for joining the company. The findings of their logistic regression suggest that the more reasons a prospective employee has to want to be employed at a given company, the less likely the company will be to lose that employee. This is important for employers to know, as they can see that offering an incentive or perk to working at their company versus their competitors might stymie attrition rates. Now, we should go through a few examples to further elucidate the difference between quantitative and qualitative research. And in this example, we're going to focus on a hypothetical firm here. we're going to focus on a firm who is dealing with, let's say, high attrition rates. So this firm has had serious problems with attrition rates over the last 2 fiscal years and is looking for insights as to what might be causing the rate to be so high. There are 2 ways we could take on this scenario, again, quantitatively or qualitatively. So an example of a quantitative approach may be to examine the relationship between the high attrition rate and company morale. Our participants within the company could be randomly offered participation in a survey asking about their attitudes towards the overall company culture and how likely they will be to leave the company within the next year. This random sampling method would ensure reliable sample representation of the population. At least 30 participants would need to be involved in order to ensure significant results. From here, we can employ Likert-type scales to quantify employee morale and possible attrition by delivering statements to them and asking if they agree or disagree with those statements and to what extent they do so. An example might be the statement, "I will continue working for this company for at least another year," or "I enjoy working for this company." And then providing a scale for them to respond between strongly disagree all the way to strongly agree. Now, of course, all this will be done with informed consent and under the condition of an anonymity to protect participants. We can then try to establish a correlation between the responses using a Pearson R coefficient to determine if there's a significant relationship between these 2 parameters. If a moderate to strong correlation is discovered and that correlation is significant, further inquiry involving inferential statistics can be conducted to determine the root causes of this relationship. What we would anticipate is that employee morale would be negatively correlated with attrition rates. We could also approach this from the qualitative viewpoint. Under the condition of anonymity and with informed consent, a researcher could survey those who had recently left the company for an exit interview in which open-ended interview questions could be asked about the reasons for leaving. If enough participants end up responding, content analysis could be used to uncover the underlying themes that tie these former employees together. Open-ended questions like, "Describe your experiences with this firm that led to your eventual departure," can help get to the nitty-gritty and give us rich data to then code and thematize. Once enough participants had responded, we could then analyze the data from those underlying themes and draw conclusions based on the themes that we had found. If it became clear that, for example, employees' stress levels were instrumental in our former employees' resignation, we could use that information to revise employee workloads, such as a 4-day workweek initiative, etc., in an attempt to reduce employees' stress levels, thereby increasing employee retention. Now, overall, qualitative and quantitative research designs both occupy different spaces within the research community, but they both play a vital role in understanding different aspects of similar problems. This gives us a fuller picture surrounding these problems and more clear paths for moving forward to handle these problems as they arise. Qualitative research offers rich insights into lived experiences, but is hardly generalizable into the population at large, as its replicability is not as robust, while quantitative research provides empirical data that can be analyzed statistically and provide concrete and generalizable results and conclusions at the expense of nuance and deeper understanding of human experiences. Both have their strengths and weaknesses, and both exist to provide the scientific community with a better understanding of the world and the human psyche. Thanks for listening to this training program.